to buy some turkey feathers?
I bought like 1 million turkey feathers already.
I don't remember counting up.
And also, I'm in second place.
Oh, you are? You're a dream.
And I left all my money in my car, so I can't buy anything.
That's not second place, Natasha.
Shut up. I just didn't have any staples, so I couldn't staple them on. Okay, so after you've written your table of contents, you're going to turn your book open to page 34. We're going to do 34 and 35 today, and they're both going to represent inequalities. So because I need to write specifically on a piece of paper, I'm going to use page 35. So we're going to talk about a couple of things before we move on. And the first thing that we're going to talk about is, okay, I was in the middle of a sentence and then somebody opened my door. So I just went and locked my door so I can finish this video. To be honest with you, I recorded it once already, but I forgot to push record. So I'm doing it again. So anyways, at the top of the page here, we're going to talk about what the symbol means. So inequalities means not equal to. Okay, so that's where we use this symbol that looks like this. And when you were in elementary school, they called it like an alligator, right? Some of you might have had an alligator, some of you might not have, but it's a really good way to help you remember where the alligator face is. So there's my alligator teeth that I drew, and the alligator always eats the bigger number, okay? So the bigger number is always what the alligator is going to eat, and the smaller number is always on the other side, okay? So when you see a phrase like x is less than 8, then the alligator is going to eat the 8 side because the alligator always eats the bigger number. Okay, so moving on, the next thing we need to talk about is also when we're writing a phrase like, let's look at this example on this page. It says, I have less than $5 in my pocket. We need to ask ourselves about this $5, okay? It says $5. Now, I look at the number and I have to decide. It says I have less than $5 in my pocket. So is $5 a minimum amount or is it a maximum amount? And I know that if I have less than 5, 5 has to be the most I can have in my pocket. So 5 is the maximum amount, okay? So my inequality that I'm going to write, remember the alligator always eats the bigger number, so I'm going to say x is less than 5 because the alligator always eats the bigger number and 5 is the most I can have. Does that make sense? Okay, so then let's look at the next example. It says to win a game you need more than 5 points. Okay, so this time we've got 5 points. Now we have to decide, is that the maximum amount or the most or the minimum amount? Okay, so to win I need more than 5 points. So if I have 5 points, is that enough to win? It is not. So 5 points is my minimum amount that I need. Okay, so I'm going to say x is going to be, and I'm going to put my 5, and remember the alligator eats the bigger number. So this time the alligator's not going to eat the 5 because 5 is the lower number. It says minimum. So this time the alligator eats the x. Okay? Does that make sense? Alright, so that's talking about minimum and maximum as far as the alligator eating the bigger number, okay? So if we look at the next one, the next little line is about less than or equals to, okay? So these are the phrases where, you know, here I could have less than 5. That means I don't have 5, I have less than that in my pocket. Here I have more than 5. That means that 5 points won't win me the game. I have to get like 6 points or 7 points to win the game. So these don't include the 5. They're not equal to 5 at all, ever. But the next phrase says, you need at most 9 players for apples to apples. So on this one, we have that 9 players. Is that the maximum number of players or the minimum number of players? And in this case, this is the maximum number. So I still have x and I still have 9, but this time the alligator is going to eat the 9 because it's the maximum. but it says you need at most 9 players. So in this case, are 9 players allowed? Could I have 9 players to play the game? Yeah, I could. So if that's the case, then I need to put underneath here a little line underneath. And this comes from the reason that we say less than or equals to. And so remember, your equal sign looks like this, and your less than sign looks like this. So if I put these two symbols together, I'm going to take all of the less than sign and half of that equal sign, and I'm going to put them together to make this inequality symbol. Okay? Lastly, it says you want to make at least a 90 average. So 90 is my number. 90 is the average I want to make. Now some of you want to make a 70. Same idea, okay? So is 90 the most number I want to make, the biggest number I want to make, or the smallest? Is it my maximum or is it my minimum? And in this case, if I want to make at least a 90, then I'm not satisfied with anything lower than that. So this is the lowest or the minimum I can make. So I'm going to say X and I'm going to say 90, and this time the alligator does not eat the 90 because this is not the bigger number. It's going to eat the X. Okay? Now, the last thing you say is it okay to have 90? Would 90 be okay in this sentence if I want to make at least a 90? Yes. So we have to say or equals to on the symbol. Does that make sense? All right. So take this page and I want you to fold it in half just like so. And if you look at the outside, there are words that describe each of those situations that we just talked about. Okay? So this one says is less than. This one says is greater than. This one says is less than or equal to. So we have to have the or equals to, the line underneath it. And this one says is greater than or equals to. So we have to have that line underneath it as well. Okay? Now, up at the top of your notebook page, we need to talk about one more thing, because over here it's asking us to graph each of those situations. So to graph those situations, we need to determine what kind of dot we put when we graph. So an open dot versus a closed dot. Okay, so we make a little table up here at the top of your page, open dot versus closed dot. Okay, so an open dot means not equals to. Okay, so if I have the symbol that looks like that, or the symbol that looks like this, so the less than symbol or the greater than symbol, I'm going to use an open dot. A closed dot means equal to. So if I have this symbol, or I have this symbol, that means I'm going to use a closed dot. So real quick, we're going to graph those 4 examples that we just talked about. If you need to pause this to write this down, go ahead and pause it real quick, and then push play when you're done. And let's go ahead and graph those 4 examples. So here are those 4 examples. X is less than 5, X is greater than 5, X is less than or equal to 9, and X is greater than or equal to 90. We're going to graph all 4 of those over here. The first thing you're going to ask yourself is, do I need an open dot or do I need a closed dot? So if I'm graphing X is less than 5, that means it's not equals to, so I'm going to use an open dot. So let's go ahead and put numbers on the graph. I like to put my number in the middle and then just go ahead and put the rest of them on there. So this one gets an open dot, and then it says 5 is my maximum, so that means I want everything that is smaller than 5. So that means that's everything on this side. Okay? You could ask yourself, okay, what's smaller than 5? Well, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. So all of those numbers on this side are all less than 5. I'm using a highlighter because it doesn't show up so well on the graph. So why did I do an open dot? Because it says not equal to. I'm just going to add that in my notes. So this is graphing X is less than 5. Okay? Alright, let's graph X is greater than 5. So now that I've graphed the first one, we know we have to label the graph, the line. So 5, 6, 7, 8, 4, 3, 2, and then we have to decide, is this one going to get an open dot or a closed dot? You're right, it's going to get an open dot. At least I hope you're right. And then we have to ask ourselves, alright, if 5 is the least number, the minimum, then what numbers are bigger than 5? 6, 7, and 8. So we want to go all the numbers bigger than 5. Okay? I just remembered what I told my kids last year, and it helped out a whole lot. When you're drawing your arrow, you're going to look for where X is. Okay? In this case, X is on the small side, so I'm going to shade in the small direction. In this case, X is on the big side, so I'm going to shade in the big direction. Does that make sense? So ask yourself open dot or closed dot, and then ask yourself X is on the small or the big. That's all you have to do, and that's how you graph equations. Okay? Or inequalities. Alright, so let's look at the next one. We've got X is less than or equal to 9. Oh, and I forgot. Let's go back up here. This one's open dot because it's not equal to. Okay? Alright, so graphing on this next one. Remember, it's 2 steps. Step 1, is it an open dot or a closed dot? This time it's a closed dot because it says equals 2. Alright, let's put our numbers on the graph. 9, 10, 11, 12, 8, 7, 6. And so we're going to put a closed dot at 9. That means we just shade it in. And then is X on the big side or the small side? So X is on the small side. So I'm going to shade in the small direction. Make sense? Okay. Last one. X is greater than or equal to 90. Is this one an open dot or a closed dot? It's a closed dot because it says or equals to. And now we're going to shade in the greater direction. So 91, 92, 93, 89, 88, 87. And so we're going to shade closed dot, and then X is on the big side, so we're going to shade in the big direction. And then we're done. Okay. All right. So that's this one. If you want to go ahead and glue this in right now, go ahead and do that. It goes down underneath our directions on page 35. And I'll make a separate video to go along with writing inequalities practice. So that way this doesn't feel so long. So get that glued in. So in summary, if we're writing, we decide is it a maximum or a minimum, and the alligator always eats the maximum, the bigger side. When graphing, it's 2 steps, open dot or closed dot, and then is X on the small side or the big side. So that's all you do for this page.